STAR, Strategies and Techniques in Addictions for Youngsters. Introduction. This book is dedicated in loving memory of those who lost their lives to addiction, whether by the disease itself or by the violence of being involved in these habits. May their memories inspire us to seek for better understanding, compassion, and action in the fight against addictions. Addiction is becoming more present in our society, and it is starting to being normalized through different media. This and other factors are causing that people get easily into an addictive cycle, where youngsters are one of the most vulnerable groups. The United Nations states, the adolescent brain is still developing, and drug use can have long-term negative effects. Early drug use initiation can lead to faster development of dependence than in adults and other problems in adulthood. Addiction is a complex disease composed by different phases. It is important to counteract it as soon as possible, because it not only affects those who consume, but also their families, friends, and communities. This interactive book aims to explain the nature of addiction, the challenges and consequences faced, the path to recovery and prevention mechanisms. Through information about addictions, real cases, activities, and practical tools, the book will encourage to prevent from joining this cycle, as well as become a roadmap to healing for those who are already involved. Being involved in addictions, as well as its recovery, is not easy. Quitting from this should not be done alone. Therefore, in addition to the information offered within these pages, there has been established the STAR community on Facebook. It welcomes people affected by addictions in a direct or indirect manner, trainers, youth workers, volunteers, etc. This group is a safe space for sharing experiences, offering mutual support and finding comfort. To connect with others and participate in a network of compassion and understanding, you can join the STAR community. Understanding the science of addiction, recognizing the signs, knowing the available resources, and joining a support community are some crucial steps in overcoming this battle. Please note that this book is intended to provide information and support regarding this problem. However, it is not a replacement of professional therapy or medical treatment. It is relevant to look for help from qualified healthcare personnel in case you or someone you know is struggling with addictions. Introductory activity: the myths and realities about addictions. Duration. This activity is separated into intervals of time. The duration of each part is 1 hour. The objective of the activity is to identify common statements about addictions and figure out if they are myths or realities. Part 1. Before reading the book. Step 1. Ask your learners to write down 5 statements about addictions. For example, Myth 1. Prescribed medicines are safer than illegal drugs. Myth 2. Isolation is a social pressure efficient to quit drugs. Myth 3. Addiction is a personal choice. Myth 4. First, you have to reach the bottom before getting better. Myth 5. I can consume because I'm not hurting anybody. Step 2. Ask each of your learners to share their statements and write them in a poster. Step 3. Put the poster in a visible place within the classroom. Part 2. After reading the book. Step 4. Read this book and do the activities included in all chapters. Step 5. After reading the whole book, review all the previous statements. Discuss together if each statement is a myth or a reality. Replace all myths with reality statements. For example, reality to replace myth. 1. If prescribed medicines are not used properly, they can be addictive and dangerous, similar as illegal drugs. Reality to replace myth 2. Marginalization makes the recovery process more difficult. Reality to replace myth. 3. Addiction changes the brain, causing difficulties in self-control. Reality to replace myth. 4. Early interventions are important for quitting addictions. Reality to replace myth. 5. Addictions and substance consumption causes not only negative consequences in the individual, but also their families and inner circles. Step 6. Which of the myths caught more your attention? Why? Why do you think certain myths about addiction are so widespread and persistent? How do myths affect the way persons with addictions are treated by their families, friends, and communities? How can we work to dispel these myths and promote a more accurate understanding of addictions? Drugs in our world. Context of addictions in Europe and the world. The statistics from this subchapter are provided by the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime in their World Drug Report Executive Summaries released in 2022 and 2023. In 2020, 1 in every 18 people globally consumed a drug. This is 26% more than a decade earlier. In the same year, approximately the number of users around the planet was cannabis, 209 million, opioids, 61 million, amphetamines, 34 million, cocaine, 21 million, ecstasy, 20 million. Although the majority of drug users are men, women consume certain types of drugs almost as frequently as them. Despite this, women are underrepresented in drug treatment programs. An example of this situation is that nearly 50% of all amphetamine consumers are women. However, less than 20% of them are receiving treatment for this substance. The percent of use of cannabis by sex and region in 2020 was Africa, 88% men, 12% women. Asia, 91% men, 9% women. Australia and New Zealand, 63% men, 37% women. Caribbean, 80% men, 20% women. Central America, 80% men, 20% women. South America, 71% men, 29% women. Southeast Europe, 80% men, 20% women. North America, 58% men, 42% women. Western Central Europe, 66% men, 34% women. The percent of users of the following drugs are opioids, 85% men, 15% women. Cocaine, 73% men, 27% women. Cannabis, 70% men, 30% women. New psychoactive substances, 70% men, 30% women. Ecstasy-type substances, 62% men, 38% women. Amphetamines, 55% men, 45% women. Non-medical use of pharmaceutical stimulants, 55% men, 45% women. Non-medical use of pharmaceutical opioids, 53% men, 47% women. Non-medical use of sedatives and tranquilizers, 51% men, 49% women. In 2020, approximately 11.2 million people around the globe injected drugs. Unfortunately, this has caused health problems, where some of them have been living with HIV, 1 in 8 persons, 1.4 million. Hepatitis C, almost 50%, 5.5 million. Both diseases, 1.1 million, had both diseases. Youngsters are using more drugs than the adult population. In many countries, young people have higher levels of consumption than in past generations. In 2021, globally, the group of young people aged 15 to 16 had an annual cannabis use prevalence of 5.8%, compared to 4.1% among the group of 15 to 64 years old. Their cannabis consumption ranged from under 3% in Asia to over 17% in Oceania. In most regions, such as Europe, the proportion of adolescents who consumed cannabis was higher than in people aged 15 to 64. Only in Africa and the Americas, the cannabis use among adolescents was similar to the rest of the population, although adolescent consumption in the Americas was higher until recently. Furthermore, the consumption of new psychoactive substances is more common among school students than in the rest of the society. On the other hand, in Africa and Latin America, the majority of individuals receiving treatment for drug use disorders were under 35 years old. In 2020, the share of countries reporting the drug as the most harmful was drug use disorders, cannabis, 40%, opioids, 35%, amphetamine-type stimulants, 15%, sedatives and tranquilizers, 6%, cocaine, 4%, drug-related deaths, opioids, 77%, amphetamine-type stimulants, 7%, cocaine, 4%, cannabis, 4%, sedatives and tranquilizers, new psychoactive substances, hallucinogens, other drugs, 2%, drug-related treatment, opioids, 38%, cannabis, 33%, amphetamine-type stimulants, 16%, cocaine, 8%, other drugs, 4%, sedatives and tranquilizers, 1%, Addictions can cause premature deaths and severe health consequences. The United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime provides the years of healthy life lost in 2019 due to premature deaths or disability, estimating 230 million of hours in tobacco, 93 million in alcohol, and 31 million in drugs. Some of the main challenges faced by regions are Canada and United States, high overdoses in opioids, increase in consumption of methamphetamine, cocaine consumption, people with HIV who inject drugs, Latin America, manufacturing of methamphetamine and opioids, cocaine production and trafficking, cocaine use disorders, Europe, expanding cocaine market, increasing use of ATS, amphetamine-type stimulants, opiates consumption, Africa, non-medical consumption of tramadol, increasing cocaine trafficking, heroin trafficking spilling over into local heroin use, high prevalence of HIV among those who inject drugs, consumption of synthetic stimulants, Oceania, high prevalence of use of stimulants, methamphetamine and cocaine, Asia, opiates production, trafficking and use, increasing methamphetamine trafficking and use, high prevalence of HIV among those who inject drugs, captagon trafficking and use, high prevalence of opioids use, expansion of the ATS, amphetamine-type stimulants market, methamphetamine manufacture, large methamphetamine market, Russia, expansion of NPS and synthetic drug markets, opiates use, high prevalence of HIV among those who inject drugs. According to recent calculations, there has been an 11% increase in cocaine production from 2019, reaching a record 1,982 tons in 2020. Additionally, cocaine trafficking had a continued growth throughout the year. Women are involved in various aspects of the global cocaine trade, including coca cultivation, transporting small quantities, selling to consumers, and smuggling into prisons. How COVID modified the situation of addictions. The United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime provided an overview of the impact caused by the pandemic. Consumption. There was a rise in overall cannabis use, driven primarily by increased frequency and quantity among existing users rather than the induction of new users. Adolescent drug use declined, coinciding with lockdown periods. The consumption of sedatives such as benzodiazepines, tranquilizers, and other psychiatric pharmaceuticals increased under non-medical purposes. Drug use at recreational venues, especially MDMA, temporarily decreased during lockdowns. Treatment services. Regular users were less affected, but those with drug use disorders frequently faced withdrawal and relapse. More individuals sought treatment, however, services were insufficient to meet the increased demand. Drug prevention, treatment, and related services faced disruptions, including closures, limited capacity, and reduced in-person attendance. Delivery. Innovations, like telemedicine, were introduced and might continue in the post-pandemic, though further research is needed for effective implementation. Most common drugs in European countries. The executive summary, published in 2022 by UNODC, provided an interesting scenario about the most common drugs consumed in Europe. Demand. Cocaine is the first stimulant drug consumed in Europe, and amphetamine the second. Recent data indicates a rise in methamphetamine consumption within the region. Europe is an important consumer market for ecstasy. The use of new psychoactive substances, NPS, appears to be increasing in Eastern Europe, despite of being contained in Western and Central Europe. Central and Western Europe continue to be the second largest cocaine market globally. In Central and Western Europe, THC, delta-9 tetrahydrocannabinol, content has increased 50% in herbal cannabis and almost tripled in cannabis resin over the past decade. This has caused significant health problems. Opioids are the primary drug for which people are in treatment, closely followed by cannabis. The regular use of cannabis products have increased in Western Europe. Therefore, it has been a rise of cannabis use disorders and associated psychiatric issues. In 2019, 31% of those entering to specialized drug treatment in the European Union were for the consumption of this substance. In Eastern Europe, 1.3% of the population, 1.7 million people, inject drugs, becoming the highest prevalence rate worldwide. More than 25% of these people are living with HIV, being the second highest rate globally. Supplies in Central and Western Europe, the trafficking of cannabis continues to be an issue. In resin and herb presentations, the trafficking is intra-regional, and also resin is imported from North Africa. Central and Western Europe are key hubs for the production of synthetic drugs, especially amphetamine and ecstasy. There is an expansion of the methamphetamine production in the sub-region. The Hydra market became the world's largest Russian-speaking market on the dark web. It was relevant from its creation, 2019, until its dismantlement, 2022. The market for new psychoactive substances, especially cathinones, is expanding in Eastern Europe due to the online supply. How drugs affect the planet. The production of illicit drugs is causing a negative impact on our planet, even though many people are not able to see in their communities. The World Drug Report, 2022, provides interesting key findings. Studies indicate that drug supply chains have a high carbon footprint impact per unit produced. For example, the carbon footprint of producing 1 kilogram of cocaine is 30 times greater than 1 kilogram of cocoa beans. Cannabis cultivated indoors has a carbon footprint that is 16 to 100 times higher than cannabis grown outdoors, primarily due to energy consumption. Illicit drug crop cultivation often is done in fragile ecosystems, such as national parks and forest reserves, leading to deforestation. The manufacturing of synthetic drugs generates a considerable amount of waste, sometimes between 5 and 30 times the volume of the final product. This waste is increased by the use of pre-precursors and pre-pre-precursors. The disposal of this waste can severely impact soil, water, and air quality, indirectly affecting organisms, animals, and the food chain. Cleaning up seized synthetic drug waste, storage sites, or manufacturing laboratories is expensive and poses risks to public safety. Some alternative projects have incorporated environmental protection measures, such as reforestation and agroforestry, and have pioneered the use of instruments like carbon credits and payment schemes for environmental services. Quiz 1. Which is the most consumed drug in the planet? A. Cannabis. B. Opioids. C. Cocaine. D. Amphetamine. Correct answer. A. 2. What is the name of the disease that almost 50% of people who inject drugs are living with? A. COVID-19. B. HIV. C. Hepatitis. C. D. Diabetes. Correct answer. C. 3. The consumption of new psychoactive substances is more common among A. Adult celebrities. B. Sport communities. C. Adults. D. School students. Correct answer. D. According to the share of countries reported in 2020, which was the most harmful drug related to deaths? A. Opioids. B. Cannabis. C. Cocaine. D. Amphetamine-type stimulants. Correct answer. A. According to the share of countries reported in 2020, which was the most harmful drug that causes drug use disorders? A. LSD. B. Cannabis. C. Spice. D. Amphetamine-type stimulants. Correct answer. B. 6. According to World Drug Report, released in 2022, which was the most consumed stimulant drug in Europe? A. LSD. B. Cannabis. C. Cocaine. D. Amphetamine-type stimulants. Correct answer. C. Answer if the following statements are true or false. 7. Women are underrepresented in drug treatment programs. A. True. B. False. Correct answer. A. 8. Adults are using more drugs than the adult population. A. True. B. False. Correct answer. B. 9. During then COVID-19 pandemic, there was a rise in overall cannabis use, driven primarily by increased frequency and quantity among existing users rather than the induction of new users. A. True. B. False. Correct answer. A. 10. Illicit drug crop cultivation often is done in fragile ecosystems, such as national parks and forest reserves, leading to deforestation. A. True. B. False. Correct answer. A. Addictions. Types of addictions. Whenever we think of addictions, what it normally comes to our minds are tobacco, alcohol, and drugs. During the past, and still in our present, these substances have been at the center of debates, as they cause a wide range of negative effects, especially in health, relationships, and economy. These substances undoubtedly contribute significantly, but they are only one aspect of a complex scheme. There are, in fact, a wide range of addictions that can take on many shapes, ranging from habits that appear harmless to more obviously harmful routines. This complex web makes evident how important it is to understand their different types. Addictions are usually divided into two broad categories: behavioral addictions, substance addictions. The abuse or dependency on chemical substances, for example, nicotine, methamphetamine, etc., is the central theme of substance addictions. On the other hand, obsessive actions or activities that offer a sensation of comfort or pleasure but eventually have detrimental effects are the focal point of behavioral addictions. In the following subchapters, you will be able to acquire deeper knowledge about both types, trending addictions, and the normalization of drugs in the media used by young people. The dynamics and complexity of addiction trends are frequently shaped by a wide range of variables, including age, social dynamics, cultural influences, and standards in the community. It is true that what is a trending addiction in one age group or society may differ greatly from another. For example, because of their income or economic dependence, teenagers and young people may be more vulnerable to more affordable drugs. On the other side, in the case of older persons, due to loneliness or chronic pain, they may be more vulnerable to becoming addicts to prescription medications. Furthermore, the messages that promote addictions and drug consumption are becoming more visible in the media used by youth generations. TV series and movies. In most of recent TV series and movies, there are more scenes of people consuming different substances. In many cases, these scenes are portrayed as a fun or normal activity. Furthermore, some characters that consume and trade drugs are represented as socially successful, cool, etc. Nowadays, youngsters are having good perceptions about drug dealers' characters. Music. Drug use is often mentioned in lyrics. Also, scenes of drug consumption are included in video clips, sometimes promoting or normalizing this. For example, the song Pepas by Farruko that has become very popular around the world, normalizing the consumption of different substances. Pepa y agua para la seca. Todo el mundo en pastilla en la discoteca. Sube las manos y las botella para arriba. Tráeme la juca y el alcohol. Translation: pipa and water for the dryness. Everybody on pills at the club? Raise your hands and bottles. Bring out the hookah and alcohol. In the song it is asked for pepa, that refers to a type of drug pill. Water will be used to tackle dehydration, as one of the effects caused by this drug. Social media. There are more forums and social media posts that share advices in consumption. Moreover, there are more memes that make addictions funny, reducing awareness of its risks. These constant messages are causing significant implications for youngsters' perceptions about addictions, as well as in their behaviors. This is leading to the normalization of drugs in our society, making our communities less aware of the negative consequences. Due to historical or environmental circumstances, some drugs may be more common in some societies than others, becoming socially or normatively acceptable. To have a deeper perspective and knowledge about this, take a look to the subchapter Reasons that Trigger Addictions.